Good morning, everyone. We're going to call this meeting to order. Today is Wednesday, December 3rd. It is 9 a.m. All council members are present, including town manager, deputy town manager, town clerk, and town attorney. If you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just realized this looks like the whole right-hand side of a football team.
I know.
All right. We have two presentations today. The first item is a presentation by Metro Forecasting Models LLC. Come on up, sir. Good morning. Nope. Nope. You can always go over to that one if you want and push the button.
Oh, there's an on switch.
Is it?
How's that? Can you hear me
There
now?
you go.
All
Now you
right,
got
very
it.
good. That's what I get for having an engineering degree. I can turn a microphone on. It's a real pleasure to be here with you all today. Today is not the end of our work for you, but sort of the culmination of a whole lot of boring math, where we poured over a bunch of different data sets that are being pulled into this presentation. This is, I think, our third or fourth presentation to you guys so far, and I'm excited to present to you with the findings we have here. To remind you, Metro Forecasting is a specialty planning firm that only works for governments like yours. That way, you know, when we give a recommendation or suggestion, it's from all of our experience and for what we think is the best for this town to succeed and to thrive. Of course, you're policymakers. I never want to supplant your role. Your role is to make the decisions. My role is to make suggestions based on my experience and so forth. My partner, Dr. Paul Van Buskirk, invented the model that we use for our population and commercial forecasting needs. And anyway, just real pleasure to be here. So let's start at the beginning. The beginning is, what do we have here today, right? Because we had pre-Ian. I'm going to be talking a lot about before Ian, but today what you have is about 19, just under 1,200 single-family homes. Now, when I say today, please keep in mind that this place is a continuous, evolving, moving target. Even since I first met with you in April, we've pulled two other data sets into this, and the data it changes faster than we can download it and take a look at it. So as of, let's call this June or July-ish, this is what your stats were. And it's important to understand you have about 6,700 housing units. And at first you might go, well, yeah, that sounds about right. And then you might go, wait a minute, there's not enough people around here to live in 7,000 housing units. And you're right. We'll be talking about, there's a faction of Fort Myers Beach that isn't quite returned back to the island, but we'll get back to that when I talk about the different population types. So you have, at least as of this summer, you had about 1,635 hotel rooms, of which only 1,484 were actually open. We know that because we actually called all the hotels and talked to them, so that we had accurate data about what they have open, what they plan to have open, and what their future plans stretching into the next year or so. You have about 290,000 square feet of commercial space. And that is true, but it's also misleading. For later on analysis, we pulled the hotels, which are normally commercial, right? Hotels aren't residential, they're commercial. But we pulled them out because, especially in beach towns, the hotel component can greatly skew the data. And we wanted to understand, well, what's the commercial here for people to actually use, right? The people staying in the hotels, where can they go to eat and the shops and those sorts of things. And I'll begin juxtaposing that a little bit later as we talk about pre-Ian. So that's where you are sort of today. And then the way we work is we look, okay, forever from now, what is your build-out potential? And so we actually did two different build-out analyses. One of them is essentially, so there was still vacant land here when Ian hit, right? I've been coming to this beach for nearly 40 years. There's always been vacant land. Of course, there's less and less each year, it seems like. But we did the build back analysis. So if it was a condo, it's building back as a condo. If it was a single family house, it's coming back. Now, albeit it was a 2-bedroom bungalow that's coming back as a 9-bedroom, single family home, rental or not. So things are definitely changing, but the premises we kept mostly the same. The only time we varied a little bit is when you had timeshares. And I'm inserting a little bit of art into this. We don't think timeshares are really going to come back. And because of, and I just had a brain fog, the thing in Miami that fell down, Champlain Towers, because of that, we're honestly wondering how excited banks are going to be to lend to condos, right? Or lend to build a condominium versus hotels. They tend to know how to take care of a commercial type property and maintain it and such. So we think some of your timeshares that have been washed away or destroyed might come back actually as hotels. Not saying that will happen. That's just sort of our gut instinct of how that might evolve. With that said, we're also watching daily the newspaper articles that are flying around as far as land solutions and other land brokers that are listing properties. I'm also a commercial broker. I'm not here to sell you anything, but I can't help but look at these listings and how prices are changing and how the chess pieces are moving on the board, because it all sort of adds up to a future, right? The intense build out, we, as a general nature, we try not to get scary. When you do certain build out analysis, if you assume the maximum density in every lot, it would be like New York City. There's no sense in raising alarm, because relax, Fort Myers Beach is never going to be New York City, right? No matter how dense people think it might come, it's still going to be sort of a small beach town with that sort of feel. However, there are differences. Notice how we add about 300 housing units depending on densities and that sort of thing. So what we're trying to measure with these build outs is I'm looking at you, and what's difficult or challenging of my job is it's not just you. I'm looking 3, 4, 5, 6 councils from now. What will their attitudes be? What will they want? And the truth is we really don't know, but we're really good at looking at the data and looking at property types and trends. And we think that somewhere between the build back and intense is probably where you're going to fall. With that said, I am the consultant. You are the policymakers. This is completely within your control to limit or promote certain types of land development that occurs on the island. When a developer comes to you, it's your job to sit back and think about, well, how is this going to impact us overall? And what if I replicate that everywhere? How would the town look, and how would we feel about that? Again, not here to tell you how you're going to feel, just bringing that to your attention. Now, if we go to toward the bottom of the slide. So today I said you're at 290,000. I'm going to jump ahead to one of the slides. So before Ian, you had just over 500,000 square feet of commercial space. So you lost an easy 200,000. And that even understates, because if the structure is still here, I'm still counting it. But again, we're like eating popcorn. We're looking at all the commercial space that is getting ready to come back online. The windows have been replaced. They put the paint back up, like the plaza with Mr. Tequila in it. That thing we think is very, very close to coming back online. Been out of service for a few years. So we still count that as even active. But on top of that, you've lost 200,000 square feet. But you have the potential to add almost 500,000 more from where you are today. Not saying you will. Again, within your purview of what you approve or don't approve, and how things get redeveloped or not redeveloped, right? Not picking on anyone, and I hate to get overly specific, but when you look at the churches, I know one church cut a deal, and they're putting, I think, 12 homes behind the church to help the church rebuild their building. But how will some of these other churches evolve? I'm really good at what I do, and I have no idea. It's really difficult to ascertain how those will go. Anyway, so this is not meant to scare you, but this is sort of your future, probably the bookends of how your future might look, again, depending on what decisions you make and your successors in the future. All right. Not to bore you with a bunch of definitions, but you either get definitions or words today. Sorry. I tried to bring some pictures in. I'll try to make it as interesting as possible. But let's talk about homestead versus non-homestead. So we went back years to look at how your trends have been. And what's really interesting is you actually have been exceedingly consistent. About 24 to 25% of every housing unit is homesteaded. What that also means is that 75 to 76% of your homes are non-homesteaded. And I think you all know what that means. Now, just because something is non-homesteaded doesn't mean that it's being used seasonally. It's my strong hunch from spending decades on this beach that probably 99% of them are not being rented to people living here year-round, but I'm sure there's a few that are being rented to people living here year-round and so forth.
Do you have any way of calculating that data of what is being used as a non-transient short-term rental property that is non-homesteaded? Is there any way to
So
calculate that?
the only thing close I can get to it, and I tried. I like to tell you all the things that I did to try to bring you the very best data. So I contacted I did a public records request with not the tax collector, but the
Property appraiser?
No, the voting, the election supervisor. 2 months ago. I still don't have the answer. Apparently, it's very, very secret. But I wanted to know how many actual registered voters you had, not how many votes are cast. I don't care about Republicans, Democrats. I don't care about any of that stuff, because we're tracking deep in your data. You have homesteaded units that you can't live in right now, which means they're living somewhere else, probably nearby, right? But if the property appraiser recognizes that it's not their fault that they're not living there, they can't, the unit's not livable. But we're watching again. This stuff is changing by the day, and so. We're looking at these homestead versus non-homestead, and my feeling was, as I looked at the data in the population, I was trying to align your voters, right? Because you have so many homesteads. If you let's say you had enough homesteaded units for, say, 1,000 people, right? But you had 1,500 voters. Well, okay, that tells me that those other 500 are living in non-homesteaded units, right? Because they must live on the island to qualify to be able to vote. But apparently, it exceeds the amount of homesteads we have. So that's the only way I can sort of back end of how many of these. But which house is rented and which one isn't? That's very, very difficult. I will share with you, and I'm not suggesting anything to you. I did some work for Holmes Beach, I don't know, 5 years ago or so. So I know you guys, maybe you're aware or not, but your fire department actually tracks all of the rentals. You're supposed to, it was $100 a year, 150 a year to register your unit so they would know where all the rentals are. Holmes Beach actually registers every bedroom. So they have a really strong database, and they know how their seasonal population can fluctuate. And in fact, I borrowed some of that ideas when I was working on predicting yours. So to answer your question directly, it's nearly impossible to tell exactly which housing unit is rented to a permanent resident and which ones are used on a seasonal basis. The fire station data might be a clue, right? But we all know that not everyone complies with rules, and not everyone is probably registered their housing unit with the fire department. So a suggestion maybe is to enhance that database, and or also include how many bedrooms are in each unit too. With that said, the property appraiser data does have the number of bedrooms, and that's what we have been using to calculate some of your future population. So sorry I couldn't answer your question directly. It's an excellent question. It deserves an answer. It's just the data is very, very difficult to uncover. Okay, homestead versus non-homestead. Our homestead, by definition, permanent residence. Non-homestead, highly likely to be seasonal and not permanent. But again, there's a small percent that I'm sure are in there. And this is important because we talk about then the composition of your population. So you have three different main types. You have your permanent residents, right? And that we think is, I'll show you some tables here in a minute, but it's just over 3,500. And let's be honest, that was probably maybe a month or two ago. Again, these things are changing so fast as new COs are being issued and people are moving back into buildings. I think I saw 2 or 3 actual large condos that look like they're within days of opening back up again. Those are going to change. Your population is going to change throughout that. Anyway, your permanent residents, then your seasonals, and your seasonals vary from people that actually own units and spend maybe 5 months a year here or something like that, to people that own units and may only spend a month here, and then they put in one of those rental programs. I used to have a place up on the north end of the beach, and I was one of those. We stayed in the unit maybe 2 months of the year, and then rented it out to help cover some of the very high taxes and operating costs and all those sorts of things. So we have permanent and seasonals, and again, the seasonals, that has one of the biggest impacts on our day-to-day population. One of the things I'm not going to be talking about today is your daytime population. If you want to get scary, you take the number of lease hand trips times some magic number, 25, 30 people, and you get to a very large, scary number. We did not get into that type of data. We're actually talking about people that are staying on the beach, spending the night, and using the services that the town offers. So the third different kind of population here is our transients. Now, typically that would also be our sort of Airbnbs, but because I don't have good Airbnb data, we're talking about only hotels at this point in time. So you have your permanent, your seasonals, and your transients, and those make up the majority of your population that are staying here, spending the night, going to your restaurants, and may or may not need certain town services. Because of the way the population is different, the way the different components work, there is a large latitude of your seasonal population during the year. I know you felt it. I know I've been here for a New Year's Eve where I swear I couldn't see 1 square inch of beach all the way down the beach. There were so many people on the island. We also know that, spring break, the Easterish, that sort of time period is also peak season. There are a lot of people here. Uh, we used great care in putting these numbers. Again, we don't want to scare anyone or put something up there that it can't be backed up. With that said, I don't know every person that comes on and off the on and off the island. Apologize for that, but we tried very hard to be accurate. So this somewhat boring graph, what's very interesting is the first couple of years. So the bottom to put the scale in, those are at 1 year, so not 5 year increments. Your population is going to change dramatically over the next 24 months. I'm going to say even between now and mid-season, so February, beginning of March, with all the units we see coming online, we're going to see a huge difference even from last season. And you're going to see that jump again going into 27. And this isn't due to new construction. This is just the existing units coming back online. And how will they be used is a big question in our mind. So we know there's many hundreds of housing units that have homestead exemptions that are still not living on the island. We can track that because of the way the property appraiser discounts the values. We're seeing condos that are 500,000-600,000 being taxed at 100, 110, 120,000. Clearly, they're not taxing that for someone living there. And when we actually then drove by and checked out some of these places, we know that no one's living in them. But how will that unit be treated once the unit is livable again? Are they going to return to the island? Sure. They lived here for a reason. They must love it. They already own the unit. Or how many of them are going to go, it's been 3 years. I'm now living in Estero. I got new friends and neighbors. Oh, such a hassle. I don't want to live through that again. So I'm just going to stay here. And then they maybe sell their unit or take it off homestead and start renting that unit out.
Dave,
Yes.
over here,
Hi.
Rebecca.
Yeah.
If I may interrupt quickly,
please,
and you may
yes.
get to this, but I'm wondering, will you be able to show us what share of our residents are peak currently or transient, or
Right. I
is
didn't
that
get into
something that you
percents.
can give us?
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I'm glad you
correct,
guys are sitting
percentage.
down because I've got some big numbers to
Okay,
roll at you.
so
I'm just
we'll
sort
see
of
that.
easing into it. We're getting into it very quickly here.
Perfect. That's all I needed.
Say
Thanks.
very quickly. So here we go. And they only get bigger from this point on. So this is the simplest form. So what I'm looking at here is basically your just permanent residents. And so I'm saying you have 4,941. Those are active housing units. You actually have, as we said before, closer to 6,800. But of those, only 4941 are considered not damaged. And remember, this is as of, I think, August. And I guarantee you, since then, I mean, every 5 minutes, something is changing on the beach. But then using some very detailed demographic analysis, note we didn't use one number. We're using 50 different numbers all over the island based on census data that we could track back to 2020 and vacancy rates, household sizes. So we think there's about 3,500. I don't know. I heard from someone that would think there's about 3,200 voters now, 3,300. That may or may not be true. Again,
That's close.
I never got an
34.
answer to my public records requests. maybe it's coming. But we think that there's at least 12 to 1,300 people that are currently displaced, not living on the island, waiting for their units to be finished so they can either use them seasonally or on a permanent basis. And so that's why we look at the first 3 years there, 25, 26, 27. Notice your population, your total population isn't changing because we're not really seeing a lot of new development. Yes, there's single family homes being completed, but it takes a whole lot of single family homes to equal, one condo coming back online. So we see about 1,300 people coming back over this next 6 to 8 months. And then next year we see another 500 people. And then we think you'll be back to where you were sort of pre-Ian in terms of your permanent population. Now, how will it change and grow from there? Well, part of that is, again, we don't know how that homestead versus non-homestead is going to change. Part of me wants to say it's not likely to change because I've looked at years and years and years of your data, and it didn't go back to the 90s, but it's fairly consistent at 24 to 25%. I hope you maintain that. I would like to even see that that homestead even grow as a ratio, but it's hard to tell at this point in time. That's why it's important also to monitor this through time. So we see your population peaking out potentially at about 5,600, and if you look back, that was about your permanent population back in 1990. Of course, in 1990, there weren't near the number of condominiums that there are today. Pink Shell is famous for they had all those little villas and they tore them down and built hotels. It's going to be very, very difficult to get back to that 5,600, but we see that as a potential through about 2040 or so. Okay, what's this table is not additive. So last table you could go, okay, this plus this equals this. This is not. This is, think of this as we're at the ice cream store and we have some vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. So we have our non-homesteaded units. So you have 3,600. Now that's not all of them. Those are the ones that are online and active, right? Because we actually know there's about 5,500 or 6,000 of those units, but only about 3,600 of them are online. You got another couple thousand coming online as they get repaired and so forth. So if I, not to get overly like, shoulders, feet, and toes or whatever, but our peak season, right, is over here. And then either side of the peak season is our shoulders. And so we're talking about the shoulder seasonal population. And what we've done there is we've taken your non-homesteaded units and we've just used the census demographics and adjusted the vacancy rate slightly to approximate what your shoulder season is. So this is, I would say you have a shoulder season even now. It starts in the late November, early December, and rolls through at least the end of January before that February surge starts kicking in, and then at March and April is our absolute peak season, and then as we head into May and June and pretty much by July that the shoulder season is over with. But today you have about 4,700. But look at that, just in 2 short years, you're at 8,700. That is a big swing. That's what I'm saying. You have some big changes over the next 24 months, and maybe it won't work out this way, but I've been doing this a long time. I've been on this beach for decades. I am pretty sure this is what is going to be happening. So if you feel this like, wow, there's a lot of people around, you won't be wrong. There are a lot of people that are going to be showing up. Um, Again, this is mostly from those damaged units that are coming back online. From there, all of the future growth beyond about 2030, we see that is some of the approved projects that we think will be starting construction in 28, 29, and probably come online around 2030. Then we jump from our shoulder population that then we see varies from about 4,700 to about 10,000 over the foreseeable future. And then we have our peak season. So those are, again, these are not additive. The peak season says, okay, now we have our shoulder, which we have, uh, not a majority, but a good dose of our seasonal units. That they're here, the ones that come from up north, they're here for almost 6 months because they're not full-time residents, but 4 or 5 months. Then we get into the peak where now it's not just them, but they have the grandkids come in too, right? Because now we're backfilling. So in order to do the peak seasonal population, I stole this idea from our work in Holmes Beach 5 years ago. And you may not like it, but I'm willing to share with you our entire methodology. And what it was is we took the bedrooms, because there's an accurate count of that in the data. We took all those bedrooms and we said, okay, we don't want to use scary numbers, but what if we assumed 1.25? When I worked for Holmes Beach, they had us use 1.5 persons per bedroom, which is not crazy. Our 2-bedroom unit sometimes had 6 or 8 people in it, so it's possible, but it wasn't the norm or likely. So these numbers at in close to 9,000 peak season, which I think you're likely to see this coming season, growing to 15,000. That's with only 1.25 people per bedroom. So I think these are modest numbers, even as scary as they look. But if we then travel on down to 2040, you see we're looking at hitting on about 18,000 people. Then we look at our transients. Now, again, there's all different kinds of party sizes. There's different kinds of parties. There's the retirees, there's the college kids, and so forth. But on average, we use 2 people per bedroom just to approximate what that population might be like, not per bedroom. 2 bedrooms or 2 people per unit, right? So it might be low, it might be high, but it's a good approximation, we feel. So you're at about 3,000 people now this coming season, and these are documented hotel rooms that exist today. There is no guessing, well, maybe they'll be online. These are the real ones, but as we march through time, notice again, by 2027, that's grown by another 1,000. That's as these other hotel rooms, and forgive me, I can't remember the name, but there's a hotel across in Lani Kai that's actually owned by Lani Kai. I think that's going to come back online either this spring or maybe in the fall. That's an example of existing hotel rooms that aren't quite back online yet that we expect to be, and of course, adding to that transient population. So again, remember, this was the ice cream store, different flavors, and now we're going to start putting them together. So on the first column with permanent population, we said it's about 3,500 people. Then we have our shoulder population of about 4,700 people. A transient, this is we've backed off. We have I can't remember, I think it was a 25% vacancy rate in the hotels because again, in the shoulder season, the hotels aren't exactly burgeoningly full. And so if we add that up all across the board, so we think that perhaps even in the near future, you might be seeing 10,000 people that feel that day-to-day feel in the town of that level. And if we march all the way down to 2040, or even just go to 2027, again, 2 years from now, with just the existing things coming back online, it jumps to 16,000 and then down to 19,000. Remember, this is just the shoulder, right? This is a huge variation. So if you look at our permanent population in the second column, that's 5,600 in 2040, and you compare it against the total, so your permanent population is only 25% of all of your the people that you're going to feel on a day-to-day basis. Or said another way, the non-permanents are 3 times that of what your permanent residents are. Again, this is the non-crazy numbers. Now we're going to go into full peak season when it takes 3 hours just to get back on the island. One time on the 4th of July, I went to Publix off island because I was going to save time. It took me about 6 minutes to get to Publix, and it took me, I think, 2.5 hours to get back from Publix. So that's when you have 20,000 people, 30,000 people on the island. So we think that potentially this peak season, this coming Easter, you might feel as much as 15,000 people on a day-to-day basis during your peak season. But then just jump a couple years down, just 2027. I mean, you can fully conceive of 2027. It's not, decades away, and we're looking at reaching, 24,000 people. That's our permanents plus our seasonals. And if we look to the bottom, again, this involves many councils from now and a lot of decisions about land development and such. But we think you're knocking on the door of 30,000. I've read all kinds of stories. Some people saying there's 50,000 during peak season on the beach. I can't back any of those numbers up. I don't know. I don't know if I've ever seen 30,000 people on the beach myself, but it's completely conceivable that this could be happening. And I don't mean this as a canary in the coal mine. I'm warning you, if you don't make things different, this is what's going to happen. I think most of this is kind of baked in because there's not that much vacant land and not that much unknown about what the future is of the island. But I think it's imperative these numbers should be used for your planning when you think about public works, or how many employees do I need for this or that, how will my parks be used. These are definitely, we never want to plan for peak season. I don't know if you're aware of this, but FDOT, when they plan for a road, they plan for the 200th highest hour, right? They don't want to design for the one peak day because we'd all go broke building roads. So we don't want to, the town can't possibly serve 30,000 people when they're only here for 60 days a year. But certainly when we look at if I go back and look at the shoulder populations, you should be prepared to be able to handle 20,000 people for 3, 4, 5 months of the year, especially at 2030 and beyond. That's what I'm seeing through the numbers. There's an embarrassing amount of math behind all of this. I can't tell you how many times I went to my lead guy, Victor, and I said, "Are you sure? I want to see the math again." And so these numbers, there's a lot of heart and analysis that went into them. So if we didn't have people, we wouldn't need things, right? Wouldn't need parks, schools, fire stations, all that. Well, commercial demand also comes from people. And even though we have some of those scary numbers, 20,000, say shoulder, say 30,000 peak season, unfortunately, the peak can't really support commercial. It needs it, but it can't support it. It's more of our shoulder and our permanents that are going to make the businesses that can be viable, that can maintain their business throughout the year. It's important to plan for a high quality of life. And so I'll say something now and I'll point to a map later, but you might need some additional commercial land. When we looked at your homesteads versus non-homesteads, it's about mid-island is where we found was the majority of your homestead unit owners. And it's fairly obvious. Most of your homesteaders are actually not on the beach, they're actually back on the single family homes. There are still a fair number of condos that have homesteads too, but the vast majority appear to be actually on the bay side. And so we might need to provide, I'm just pulling this 10, 20, 30,000 square feet, or allow someone to build shops, with a barber, hairdresser, whatever, things that permanent type residents need, because I just don't think a barber near the Lani Kai is going to maybe necessarily have a whole lot of business. People have other things in their mind like Yo Taco or something like that. So as we now graph this, so the good and bad thing about the beach is the long and skinny. It makes it very hard to map and to show accurately. I need a huge map. But if you look at the black dots, just focus on those on the left-hand map. That's your existing commercial uses. Uh, then if you look at the map on the right, you could also say the map on the right maybe closely also represents what it looked like pre-Ian. Notice how there's a lot more of those black dots, but they tend to focus up around the Matanzas Bridge and that the south of the bridge, but on the northern part of the island. That's where the majority of these commercial uses fall. Of course, there's a fair amount too down the road as well. And we're just saying that mid part, see, so you sort of seeing there's not a lot there, and you don't need a ton. I'm just saying you might want to, if someone said, hey, I'd like to build 20,000 square feet of strip, and I hate strip, but strip has they can't support a grocery store, so we can't build one of those. But there are uses that might be helpful to your residents down that way. So I would be open to that if someone proposed that in terms of quality of life. So a part of our project too is to analyze your commercial space. And we were very, very grateful and fortunate to be doing all the modeling for FDOT on the west coast of Florida. So we actually did Manatee County, Sarasota, Charlotte, Lee, Collier. And so we have all this beach data. And so we decided to get up and look some of the smaller beach towns. And again, we wanted to do an apples to apples comparison. So when we're saying commercial, we've already pulled out all of the hotels because again, we wanted to look at really what are the goods and services that are really available to both residents and visitors. And you can see that Fort Myers Beach pre-Ian had 95 square feet, and it varies 57. The average is about 90 square feet. A normal amount of space per capita for a population with a permanent population of say 5,000 people would be about 10 square feet per capita. So you can see the influence of the shoulder and the seasonal population supporting all that space that ordinarily would nowhere. There's no way you guys could support this as a town of 5,000, but in some respects, that's a benefit that you have by living here as permanent residents, is because all these shoulder and seasonal people, we have uses here that other people don't have because they don't have the financial means to support those businesses on a day-to-day basis that the visitors support for us. So that was just sort of giving you an example of where you stand against these other beach towns. Within graphed, so again, today, you're at about 300,000 square feet. We see you going to 500,000, not overly rapidly, but over time. We think over the next couple of years as the other businesses light back up again, that's also going to create a surge of employment. If I do a back of the napkin sort of calculation, and I'm glad again you're sitting down, we believe over the next about 2 years, you're going to see, besides whatever the town needs, 450 to 500 more employees on the town to service these businesses that are about to reopen, the restaurants and other service types things. And well, it's not your fault or problem necessarily. These people, they had a place to live, and we can talk about the illegalities or whatever of all those, one bedroom rental units underneath houses that weren't really permitted that are now gone. I would lay it at your feet that it might be reasonable to promote some rental housing on the island. I'm saying market rate, but rental housing. When you take it off of the seasonal type rents can go for $3,000 and $4,000 a week, right? But when you type an annual type thing, it then lowers the profit potential and actually makes the rent more affordable for our workers and employees that we want to live on the island, to have a higher quality life and to attract high quality talent that might otherwise be nearly impossible because, well, I don't want to spend an hour and a half driving to and from work on the beach when I can just work in the city of Fort Myers and make the same amount of money, but spend 2 hours less a day just on my commuting. I see that as a real potential for you guys in the next couple of years as becoming an exacerbating problem where maybe restaurants can't open because they can't hire people because they don't have housing that's adequate. Again, I'm not talking about necessarily affordable housing. I'm just saying rental housing. When you have a house that or a unit you can buy, those are almost always going to be leveraged for the maximum return on investment, which is great for the investor, but doesn't necessarily work in the town's favor. I'm not anti-investment, but I think if you just had a small component of rental housing here for your employees, it would go a long way towards having a stable economy, and again, allowing the town to attract talent too for its various roles it's trying to fill over time.
Dave, I'd like
Yes.
to, Rebecca again, I'd like to make a comment. So we talked at the council meeting the other day, looking at the comp plan about accessory.
Dwelling units.
Yeah,
Mhm.
ADUs.
Mm-hmm.
Would that help support it if we promoted the ADUs so someone maybe can help get back some of their money from
Right.
rebuilding when they couldn't afford it, and also maybe provide housing for people who are working on the beach. So it's a little bit of income for the resident, and it's a housing opportunity for the workers.
Right. If done appropriately and legally, sure. What you want to make sure of, though, if you're trying to answer this problem, is that can't be Airbnb. There must be some sort of, and I don't mean to, some toothless regulation. I mean
Right.
something that actually code enforcement
You
is
live
making
here,
sure
you
that
work
someone
here.
is living there 365 and not, oh, the Joneses and then the farmers and then the bills or whatever here. It's not turning over every week. That does not help your situation at all. And people will be very tempted to take something that cute, right? I'm living in my house and now I can put a little ADU behind me and I can start renting that out for Airbnb. That would not help solve the problem. But yeah, that's one
But
solution.
that's something we
Another
should look
one,
into, putting in our codes perhaps.
so my former property manager lived on is it Santos up here, right? Right, sort of behind Yo Taco in the Whale. It's called the Whale now, right? Yeah, the beach, love eating the great burgers. So he used to, and I'm not sure if it was legal or not, but he actually lived where his business was. And I would encourage, as that area rebuilds, it would be wonderful if by right they could have some smaller units there, 1, 2, 3, to help support their employees, or they can live there. The less congestion, less commuting we have on and off the island, everyone's going to just live a little bit longer and have a little less frustration. At one time I met a friend here. He started in St. Pete, and I started in Naples, and he beat me here by an hour. Because I came up through the south, and Estero Boulevard was like 0.5 miles an hour for about 45 minutes, and it took forever. So we know in peak season it can take a very long time to get anywhere, which is another reason why we're suggesting a little bit of commercial down where your highest concentration of homesteaded units are, to help mitigate and reduce that kind of unnecessary congestion.
One other quick thing then.
Yeah.
So you talked about additional staff. That was a little shocking, 400, 450.
No, not for the town. I'm saying additional employees for the restaurants.
Employees.
Yeah.
Oh, 'cause
Your
that
town, I don't
scared
know.
me. Okay.
I don't know what your current
Woo!
employment levels are. Yeah, I wasn't saying you need. I apologize. I didn't mean to
Okay.
imply you needed 500 employees, but you're going to see
Staff.
500 new jobs open on this island, and whether they can
Ooh.
fill them or not, I don't know. I mean, a hotel alone can have 50 to
Right.
100 employees, and there's not one solution to this where we're gonna, if we just did this, then that'll just solve the problem. There's no way. I don't think there's room on the island to have 500 rental apartments, right? But you can still have 100. It can help solve part of that problem. And if you choose to go the ADU route, as long as again you have teeth to control that it's used for the right purposes, I applaud that too. Again, and legally and FEMA and all of the above.
Dave, if I could,
Yes.
on the ADU thing, if I can just add, and you can maybe talk about it in your projections, how it might change, but challenge going forward for us is meeting the flood zone regulations. So ADUs going forward from here on out they'd have to be elevated. We can't have anything
Right,
at
above the
at the
BFE,
ground
right?
level anymore like there used to be on
Right,
the
right.
beach. So when you're doing your projections, obviously that's going to be a factor because the cost of building those goes up quite a bit. Any
Right. Well,
comment
that's why
on
I
that?
said, and making them legal, because
Yeah.
I mean, people want to get like a TED shed and haul it
Mhm.
behind their house, and that's just not. I mean, it could work, but it's not legal and it's not safe. That's what makes it a real challenge, is having an ADU, on the beach, is because your BFE sometimes is 8, 10, 15, 20, 22 feet above natural ground. So it is a challenge. Why I'm thinking more in terms of, if we had, again, I'm not saying affordable housing per se, but if you have rental housing, and I said this before, not to bore you, I'll say it again. I've seen people plunk down $50 million for a house that they visit for 1 week a year. I have never seen someone pay $100,000 in rent and then not use it. I've never seen someone pay $50,000 in rent and not use it. It's a once there's a sunk cost, I've spent their 50 million,
Yeah.
then they don't really care about it. But no one's gonna. I got to shell out more money for rent. I'm not even using. Are you kidding me? And very few people are going to do that. And again, we want to. Hopefully that doesn't happen. We want these units to be used by people that actually live and contribute to the island's success. So. Okay, so our findings, recommendations. So our short-term population growth is going to, I don't want to use the E word, but explode. It's going to get big really, really fast. Even across the street, you can see they're putting the finishing touches on these buildings. They appear to be just weeks away from being fully back into the market. And that means being marketed. And this is a great place. You can look at the success of Margaritaville. All you've got to do is have the units here, and they are going to come. So I'm going to step into traffic here. What I failed to mention is I'm a licensed professional engineer. I'm a certified professional planner, but I also have a master's where I focused on fiscal impact analysis for municipal budgets. So I'm stepping into traffic, but I'm brave. So the good news and bad news. So in 2026, 27, we think you will meet or exceed your taxable value. So that's not the assessed value, but what they actually charge taxes on, the assessed value of your units. You're going to reach what you did pre-Ian. On one hand, that's kind of pretty good, right? Hey, we're back. Except then I'm going to tell you, well, that's the same thing as not getting a raise for 5 years in a high inflationary environment, right? So I think you'll really be back probably around 2030. We think then you will be in 2022 dollars. You will exceed your 22 revenues because of all these units that are coming back online and reaching their full potential. Also, what could be changing some of this too is as non-homestead units are sold, or even homesteaded units are sold, they're suppressed. They may have. I just had an echocardiogram. It turns out the technician, her family bought a condo here in 1972, and she said they just, in fact, it was I think it was a condo / timeshare. They wound up selling out to a big developer. I can't remember which one it was. It's Gulfwing. It was one of these ones up and down the beach. And her parents bought the unit, I think, for 32, big money, 32,000. In the 70s, 32,000 was a lot of money, right? They just sold it, I think, for 600,000. Um, uh, and my point there is that if that unit was owned since 1970, it might have a taxable value of 200,000, whereas the real retail value might be 600,000 or 700,000. As those kinds of sales occur, you're also likely to see a boost in your taxable values, which then hence means, of course, increase in revenue. So that's my sort of loose prediction. I don't know that's going to happen, but we've been studying and watching your numbers, and we think that's really going to happen. So again, you'll reach pre-Ian numbers around 26, 27, and we believe you'll exceed pre-Ian in 2022 dollars by 2030. Employment levels are getting ready to increase substantially, or the demand for employment is going to increase substantially. If I'm not saying it's your fault or your problem, but if something isn't done, those jobs might be hard to fill, and it might stymie the ability to offer goods and services, restaurants on the island, which might cause even more traffic then, because people are now having to drive off island to get dinners and those sorts of things. So it's sort of a catch-22, right? If we don't do it, then we're going to have congestion. But if we do it, then still people are going to want to come. There's no good answer here. And then, of course, the promotion of annual rental housing versus seasonal rental will greatly increase your permanent population, enhance the quality of life, and I believe reduce congestion overall too, because they won't be now traveling on and off the island in the morning or the afternoon. They'll be here, and it'll be a great place to live. So a high quality life isn't accidental. It's in your hands. I hope that you keep this in mind. And I'm not here to, again, tell you how you should think or feel. You guys are elected. I am not. You're a policymaker. I am not. But you must think about a high quality life. And what does that mean to you as a council, both individually and collectively? Maybe work on ways to attract professionals. I heard you guys, you want dentists and doctors. I'm not a communist. I'm a free market guy, but I'm also willing to recognize that a dentist probably is going to spend $500,000 to put in equipment that might be washed away by the next storm. So it might behoove the town to take some of its resources, like just as a crazy example where town hall used to be, and make some of the ground floor commercial. You could rent it as a subsidized cost. I know it doesn't make sense subsidizing a doctor, but if you want to attract some of these people that aren't naturally attracted to the island, that might be one of the mechanisms where you can help bring them to the island and keep them here, because you're owning and controlling the rent for them and making it otherwise a viable prospect of being on the beach and providing services to beach residents. And then again, hit this in the ground so many times, then locating just, 10, 20,000 square feet of services about mid-island. If that is proposed by a developer, that would be a good idea to help reduce congestion and enhance the quality of life for your full-time residents. There's a lot of science, there's a lot of art in what I've said. If you'd like to ask questions or back me into a corner, I'm all here and I'm all ears.
Jim, you have any questions for Dave?
First of all, thank you, Dave. Very, very interesting information. You suggested a hypothesis early in your presentation that I just want to wrestle with you on
Yes,
a
sir.
bit. You suggested that that in the commercial zone properties that are vacant, that there's a likelihood that they're more likely to be hotels than condos, given the reasons that you suggested. It's been my experience since the storm over the last 3 years, the complete opposite is occurring, in the sense that those who are developers, those who finance development, they're very reticent to invest in a hotel because we've had some, not only hurricane challenges, but we've had COVID, we've had red tide, and the risk element for a hotel, particularly on the south end of the island, is extremely high for the developer. In fact, they could never get financing for just a hotel. They need additional density, they need additional height to make the economics work. I just wanted to have you sort of comment on my comment in the sense that
Sure.
that seems to be contrary to what's happening on the south end. And at a minimum, they need a condo piece of their puzzle to help, and they'll pre-sell those condos to help finance the hotel in order to make the economics work. There's a lot of folks who, there's just a lot of denial about the realities of post-Ian economics here on Fort Myers Beach, particularly when it comes to these hotels. And I just wondered if you want to comment on that and maybe wrestle with me a bit on it.
Sure. No, I get down in the mud.
Yeah.
So if you roll back the tape, what I actually said was your timeshares are likely to come back, not as timeshares, but as hotel rooms. That's what I didn't say commercial. I said it was your timeshares that are likely to come back as hotels because timeshares are very difficult to finance. And we just see it going that way versus converting to out and out multifamily condominiums.
Okay, so you're using the word timeshare, not
Mhm.
condo at that point. I know
Right.
there's a subtle
So-
difference.
Right.
Okay.
Well, there's only about 3 or 4 of them up and
Yep.
down the beach, but those and they've been washed away.
Yeah.
My prediction is they could come back as condominiums. My gut tells me they're going to come back as condos, or sorry, as hotel rooms. Now, with that said, and I'm not trying to muddy the waters here, but I'll get down. Let's really wrestle in the mud. So a condo in the proper period codes is a 400 or an 0400. Okay, but there's this thing called a condotel, right? And here's the beauty. That's called a 407, or actually, it's a 404. The subsetting 04 behind it means that it's for non-long-term use, even though it is technically part of a condominium, like the pink shell, right? We see a lot of that. That is probably how a developer is going to function. They're going to actually sell the unit to you and your wife and everyone here on the council, right? And then they're going to say, oh, and the good news is you can't even come stay in it because we're going to rent it out and use it as a hotel. And don't worry, we'll send you a check each month or every quarter for the profits that's left over. We see that probably happening, a high probability. Those condotels have really sort of taken off. Now, will everything be a condotel? No, I don't believe the Margaritaville has any condotel units in it. But we certainly know Pink Shell's got that number, and I believe I can't name names. At London Bay, I believe that might be a condotel approach too. But again, the financing's not all in. I'm not sure about that. Did I evade your question or?
No, it's an interesting issue because I think certainly from everyone who wants to invest on the south end that I talked to in the last 3 years, the condo concept, not timeshare, but the traditional condo concept is the safe return on investment, easier dynamic. But on the south end, where there's a desperate need, where there is no hotel, there's no restaurant on the Gulf, there's no tiki bar on the Gulf to access the beautiful Gulf waters. So that's the challenge. And I just want to make sure we got that clear because we're going to have to help the developers in some capacity if we want those kind of amenities like a hotel, tiki bar / restaurant on the Gulf. We're going to need to do some things. Otherwise, that the areas that were once hotels will become condos and we'll never get them back again. That's a concern that I have. But
Okay.
thank you. Your comments have been very helpful.
Right. It'd be interesting. And forgive me, I try to know everything, but I don't. I try, I really do. But the Holiday Inn, what's the latest on that? Is that coming back as a one story or
It's
is that
coming back. It's pitching an interim solution while it works on a long-term solution because
Okay.
of the volatility of the market and financing. It's very difficult and the regulatory climate is volatile right now, as you imagine here in Fort Myers Beach. So it's difficult to put forth a long-term solution at this point because there's so much uncertainty.
Right. I really do see more private equity doing a more commercial type development on the beach, not saying restaurants. I'm saying like condos, condotel, that sort of thing. Because again, Champlain Towers taught us that if you give a group of people the ability to say, well, I don't want to spend $300,000 per unit to fix these repairs that I can't even see are going to make any difference to my value, they vote no. And then in the end, you have big problems. I think the condominium laws that Florida has enacted and ones they're still going to be enacting is going to, I think, drive the market not away from condos, but especially on the beach, more towards some sort of conventional commercial management and ownership.
I absolutely agree with that. The pressure to build more condos on the Gulf side, in particular on the south end, but from the public interest standpoint, the public benefit, there is no hotel on the south end, and of course during season, if you live here as a resident in a 2-bedroom condo, and you have friends and family who visit, there's nowhere for them to stay unless they drive off island or you fight the traffic to head north.
Right.
So we're in a quandary in the sense that we desperately need a hotel on the south end. We desperately want to enjoy the restaurant / tiki bar of the Gulf on the south end because you can't get north during season. So
Right.
it's a quality of life issue and a public amenity benefit dynamic. So just wanted to make sure we clarified that. So that's helpful. That's all I have. Thank you.
And also to be clear, I think your not luck, but your things are going to change quickly, and people are going to start taking notice as these people return back to it. People are going to say, "Whoa, there's all this demand," and there's going to be, I think, a rush. I think this is sort of the calm before the storm. I think that you're going to be seeing a lot over the next 2 years, people rediscovering. I know they have discovered Fort Myers Beach, but rediscovering its potential and its unmet needs for goods and services and those sorts of things, and more hotel rooms as these things come back online, as more of the damaged structures are removed. I think it's going to entice, because one thing I've noticed is that development begets development. So as London Bay gets going, that is going to probably create a whole spur for new development down that way and reinvestment. That's just what I'm predicting.
Thank
Thank you.
Rebecca?
Yes, I do. Dave, can you speak to at what point would all these changes you're presenting to us impact infrastructure or town staffing needs?
So I didn't look at your
how we keep up with those, how we, can maintain what we have.
So to give you a long answer and an indirect answer, you have to look at I don't know the utilization rate of your employees. Without talking to them, I would guess they're probably at between 95 and 105% already. So as your permanent population grows by, close to 50% as people return to the island, I see there's going to be a need for probably some additional help to meet the calls and things that are going to be happening as we have more of that. And then as our shoulder seasonal people start showing up again, because you guys have been devoid of a lot of that for the last 3 years. It's going to be, I swear to God, it's going to be like flipping a switch and you're going to like, whoa, they're here. And then when that happens, the phone will be ringing off the hook and the park's going to need more service and code enforcement's going to be busy and all those things. It could be wrong, but if I wasn't confident, I wouldn't be saying it here today, because there's one thing about my job. When I forecast, people always like to go back, well, what did he say? And then see if it really happened or not. That's what I think.
Okay. And the same would apply to capital improvements, right? Our timing of things
So
and our planning.
right, so we
for
have
it.
just had the big investment in Estero Boulevard here by FDOT and Lee DOT. I don't know where your water and sewer ranks. It would not. I could probably do it for free. Analyze what your water and sewer capacity, how that might change. I don't know what your current treatment volumes are compared to what this could be. But again, even in peak season, from my personal experience, spending again. It was decades, but I've spent a good 15 years on the beach. Even at peak season in the past, we never reached 100% of full. I always had a neighbor that was empty or this was empty. I think that might be changing too. I think we're going to see utilization rates of rentals to increase even more, which then could exacerbate water and sewer issues. But I'm not saying you don't have enough capacity. I really don't know.
How do we address that? How do you recommend we address that? Or is there some mechanism?
You have a company called Tetra Tech, I know, that works for you on water and sewer, and I know they're comfortable using our data and such, and so they'd probably be a good one to talk to your existing consultant about your flows and such, and making sure you have adequate public facilities in terms of that goes.
For me, this is one of the most important parts of this whole exercise is understanding how those numbers are going to correlate with what we have for infrastructure and what our needs are going to be 5 to 10 years from now. Because I believe exactly what you believe. We're already starting to see it now. Over the next couple of years, that light switch is going to be all the way on. And are we prepared for it? I don't know that we are, but we need to start.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, it's you can't prepare for it now. Because you don't have the money to do it. You sort of you need them to come, so they create the funding, so then you can hire the people to meet the need. And at least you're forewarned, and you seem to be fully recognizing what's happening. So at least you'll be prepared as it starts to happen, not just saying, well, is this just an uptick or is it a trend? I'm saying it's going to be a trend. So the next job that we have to do for you is actually an analysis of your park system. We'll be using this population data to help advise you on how your levels of service for your parks might change over time and such. So that is the last piece of work we do. There's also money in our budget for something what we call alternative scenarios, and that's where sort of the gloves comes off. And if you want us to model something unique or different in the town, we can model that and show you how that may impact both your full-time residents, part-time residents, or the demand for commercial services or whatnot. So again, that's already in our budget. It's sitting there. We don't spend it until we get direction from the town on what you guys would like to explore. And well, what if this happened or what if that happened? And it can be as simple as a project, or it can be, well, what if the north end did this or the south end did that? Like, what if we introduced another 1,000 hotel rooms in the south end? How would that change things? Well, that I'm just throwing that up for example. That could be a very interesting analysis because that could create some different changes from what you've experienced in the past. So,
Scott?
So let's play a little algebra here.
yes, sir.
The school, which is one of the biggest issues that we have right now, with the school up in limbo, and there's no certainty. What factor of X does that do to our homesteaded properties, in your opinion? Have you ever analyzed a town that has lost a school and what the impacts of not having a school on homesteaded versus vacation rental properties?
Right, I have not. However, I will point out that none of those towns that we mentioned, none of them they don't have a population large enough to even have a school.
Really?
So you're sort of unique in that you have one, and it really, I think the next, if there's going to be a decision made, what I would recommend you or the Lee County School Board, as I would just set it in your hands for at least 12 to 18 months. Wait for these people to return and see what that demographic looks like. Do we have more children showing up or fewer children showing up? And then if more show up, well, that's more of a reason to keep the school. And if fewer children show up, then that's a different decision that the town can then run.
Well, it's hard to make a decision on a $1.5 million house when you've got 3 kids and there's no school. So I don't know if we can sit on our hands for 18 months.
Right. And well, and then the reality is, can we do a lot of modeling for FDOT? If they're spending 1.5 million for the house, which is a very inexpensive house in terms of the beach, 3 million, they probably send their kids to private school.
You'd be surprised. I mean, you'd be surprised that we've had a realtor lose 5 deals over $2 million because there's not a school right now.
Okay.
So it'd be interesting if there's a way we could figure out what that X factor is.
Right. So what we need to do is I need to wait probably another 18 months for the surge to come back, and then we can pull some new data on demographically and see how many younger kids are showing up on the island. But I need more time because right now there clearly is just not
There's not enough data.
hardly any,
Okay.
Well, Dave, to me, that's concerning because waiting 18 months versus making decisions to drive that data, to me, makes more sense than waiting to see how the data does itself.
Right.
If you take action and you try to drive that data, to me, that seems like a better strategy than waiting 18 months to see what happens.
I guess
Will always says hope is not a strategy.
and I completely agree with you, Mr. Mayor. It's just I don't know how to attract specifically families with kids to do something
Dave,
versus an alternative, I guess.
Dave, if I could just interject, one of the challenges that the Lee County School District, they hired a demographer to do some of this research, but they never factored in sort of the whole paradigm shift post-COVID, and that we have a lot of parents, particularly affluent parents, who can afford a $1.5 million home with young children because they work from home now.
Mhm.
The whole model has changed, and I know it's going back a little bit, but there's still a lot of folks who are working from home who have small kids. And that's something that the Lee County School District never factored into their equation. And we saw the numbers coming back strong after the school reopened before Hurricane Milton hit again. So the trend is there. It's never been captured by the professionals. So I would challenge you to kind of see if there's a way to factor that element of post-COVID work dynamic into the equation. Because I don't think the Lee County School District, and maybe that was by design, never factored that in. And that's been unfortunate because I think it's distorted the potential for that school.
For what it's worth, just a small fact. 5 years ago, we were doing the demographics for Lee County School District, but they hired a California firm for unknown reasons.
I'm sorry. I'm going to go on the record. They're terrible. Their numbers were so bad, but it was to the school district's benefit in terms of their preconceived notion to close the school. That their demographics have really caused us heartburn, and and I think it's been by design, never factored in this whole new paradigm.
Thank you.
Just wanted to piggyback on something you said, Mayor, about planning. I'm wondering if others have done this, or we might consider how we might tighten our short-term rental, some of our zoning, so that we make sure that our communities, specifically Mid-Island, where you say most of the full-time homesteaded people live,
Mhm.
that they stay community focused. and not turn into, you're not living in a neighborhood anymore, but you're living in a vacation place where all your neighbors are now transient folks. Is that something we
You
could
can't do
control?
that because our code, our short-term rental code was written so long ago that we'd lose our grandfather ability. And then if the state passes something in the future, we'd have to follow state rule. So without changing it right now, we're protecting ourselves down the road.
Protecting it. So if it's a weekly rental neighborhood,
it's
like a
the-
lot
it-
of those are, they can stay that way.
You also risk a Burt Harris claim, but I'm not trying to be your attorney. Sorry.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Say that, Dave? I didn't hear that.
You also risk a Burt Harris
He's,
claim.
he's
Oh, I see.
correct. I mean, we've gone through that nightmare
Good to
in
know.
other areas of the state. You're very familiar with Holmes Beach and Anna
Mhm.
Maria.
Yeah, it's difficult. And so to lay something else at your footsteps, and this is answering you more, Mr. Mayor's, thought about a few things. So I know the town is constrained for funds. I swear to God, it's going to change very, very quickly. But one incentive you could offer, and I'm just throwing this as a what if, is you can't control Lee County, but you can control what you do. You could give 100% tax break to people with families with kids that decide to move and make this their home. You're only losing, your 1.25 mils or whatever it is. So it's not a bunch because you can't stop the Lee County property tax, but it's the way the town's saying, look, we want you so bad, we're willing to not even charge you tax. We're not talking about thousands of families because there's no room for them, right? We're talking about maybe at best hundreds, but that might be a nice little, well, they actually do want to see us there. And I see that. Not saying you should do that. I'm just throwing it on the table as a potential. It's a
Something to
low
think
cost for a
about.
town. And it's a way for as you're point, well, let's make the people do, or not make them, but let's encourage them to do what we want. And that might be one mechanism.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. If you compile that with what's being talked about at the state level with homestead taxes.
Mhm.
Um,
And perhaps even a tax break to a multi-home situation where somebody is encouraged with a tax break to rent their home for less to someone who works on the island.
There's a lot of possibilities out there.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, I do appreciate
you.
very much you giving me time today. If
one more counselor to
go ahead, yes, sir.
And thank you for that. But always it being at the end, my questions have been addressed. So as a matter of fact, just recently with what you discussed about providing tax exemptions and things like that.
Okay. When I first came here in 1989, if you had told me someday I was going to be in Fort Myers Beach in a suit, I would have said you were crazy. But now it's happened 3 times. So, pleasure to be here.
Well,
But,
it's your fault. We weren't expecting you to be here in a suit.
well,
We really didn't want you.
you hire me, you get me. So that's
Mr.
how
Mayor,
it
if I-
is.
Yes, sir.
Be beachy keen.
If I can ask,
Yes, sir.
David, thanks. I actually think that I was going to ask the school question, so I'm glad several of the counselors brought it up. But I think your presentation today actually does support our argument that we need the school back. And because not just you showed potential for returning full-time residents, who are those that are here, but also those that are returning. And those that are here, we know that they want the beach school because the schools that they're choosing to send, if not Heights Elementary School, the school they're choosing to send their kids to is Sanibel, which is the most like what was here,
Mhm.
of those schools in the area. So they're not choosing the private schools, although many of them could. So I think that's a data point to consider. But also, you mentioned so rightfully, I think in this presentation, one thing we've talked about, and several actually of the businesses have talked to us about, is the huge recruiting tool that school is. You talk about the increasing number potential for employees, business employees. I agree with you.
Mhm.
We're already seeing that number tick up, but I think it's going to tick up significantly
Yes, sir.
in the next 12 to 18 months, 2 years. And that is a huge recruiting tool for them. They've come and spoken to us about that. So
Okay.
any thoughts on that as well? I mean, you said it in your presentation, but you think I'm tracking on that?
I do. Are you talking about using, saying that we have a school here as a recruiting why you should come here? Well,
Before and after school care,
Right.
it lessens their, childcare costs. Also, they get to attend more of the school events because it's close to where they work.
right.
So
And don't forget about your employees. They are most likely to be the ones to also have children. So this theoretical rental project that I was talking about that would maybe service some of the employees that live and work on the island, it could also then help foster the ability to support and have children on the island as well.
And I think, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to, just propose that one of those special projects that we ask him to work on is a continuation would be, the school. Looking more into that.
Yeah, that would be my suggestion too, is how that school could be used as a tool to derive those numbers versus wait for them to see how they happen.
Right. Okay.
We've already implemented through a lot of our decisions programs for employers to use that as a tool to attract better employees that they can bring their kids down to help support that school. And it was working, as Jim said, until Milton hit. And now we're back to where we started again. But we know it's a model that can work. I think you've given us some good ideas of how we could get there, through taxing, through other things like that to help drive those people here, through ADUs, through other things like that. But it's going to take the school to be able to do it. That's the key. That's the tool in the toolbox that we need to be able to drive those numbers.
And I'm not I'm not above using guilt. And let's say about half of the property taxes you pay on a unit is schools, right? Fort Myers Beach, newsflash, you're a donor, right? And
Yeah, they don't.
and,
They don't seem to
wait,
care.
how can
Yeah.
you take away when I generate? I don't even know what it is. Say 5,000 times
It's about 29 million.
29, 30 million, and you won't even spend 3 million or whatever it is to keep my school. That
Dave,
seems to be a
Welcome to our world.
Yeah. Dave, where you could help us on the numbers is and Will made a good point here. Aside from the economic development dynamics and the help for a workforce, the Sanibel Elementary School model, I've heard, and Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I've heard that upwards of half of the kids at Sanibel are kids who are of folks who just work on Sanibel but don't live there. And that's a dynamic that the school district seems to never want to relate to Fort Myers Beach. And if there's a way for you to maybe do a little research in Sanibel to see if indeed what is that percentage and how that might apply to Fort Myers Beach, so we can, I think, make it an even stronger argument for our school. I think that might be helpful.
okay. I can do some of that research.
Tracy's a good contact person for that. She's
I might need some help because often it's so easy when you ask for data to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's public information I can't share." HIPAA whatever regulation they want to throw at me. So in fact, I don't care what their sex is, or I just want to know what grade they're in and how many there are of them. Very innocuous information, and you can do a lot with just that piece of information. So I can work with Dr. Kohler to
That sounds good.
look at some of that. Plus, I know because of my partner, Dr. Paul Van Busker, he actually invented a special model that he used in Lee County to track every single seat in every single school in Lee County. Again, this is up to the year 2020 or through 2019. And so I have a lot of back data on Fort Myers Beach of how many kids were in each seat for a given year, and then the forecast, what that was going to look like. So I have that in my back pocket as well.
And
I'm-
while I may not know the percentage of off-island students that attend Sanibel, what I can say is they do have an off-island bus stop. So parents and other residents are able to drive their children to that off-island bus stop that then picks them up and brings them to the island. So parents aren't fighting that traffic.
Mhm.
So that is an advantage as well that needs to be considered.
It's a pleasure to work for you. And again, I care about you and what's best for you. You are my main goal to help in this process. So anything we can do to help you is our pleasure. And again, we thank you very much for your trust. Any other questions or?
No, I think we're good for now. Thanks.
All
We'll
right.
see
Thank you so much.
See you next
All right,
time.
And
Thanks,
if you
Dave.
need anything, I'm always a phone call away. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Next, we have a presentation by J.R. Evans Engineering about the wave mitigation wall. Elizabeth, she's back there. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see everybody again. Hope y'all had a great Thanksgiving time. Today, I was asked to do a presentation specifically to talk about number one. Now that we've actually started the due diligence study for the wave mitigation strategy options for the whole island, and specifically to look at what that would mean for Times Square if that was pursued. And it's really a dive into what that process looks like, and then what the regulations would be for new structures if they if they were able to achieve a flood map revision based on the implementation of a wave mitigation wall system. So again, introductions for people online and in the audience. I'm with J.R. Evans Engineering. We are a local civil engineering and floodplain management firm here in Fort Myers. I've been working in the area for over 24 years, and I focus on specifically floodplain management, water resource, coastal engineering, those types of projects. So as I mentioned, we have initiated the work for the shoreline protection due diligence study. Just wanted to highlight the purpose and the goals of the study. We've reviewed those before in a previous presentation. Again, it's to explore and evaluate mitigation options, which could include mitigation walls, along with enhanced dunes and potential for pedestrian use corridors with those systems. It's to address the coastal storm surge and wave impact and basically really enhance the resiliency to those impacts for the island. One of the goals is to actually look at conceptual designs for what that system might look like along different sections of the island. Obviously, the conditions change based on wave conditions and surge conditions, as well as adjacent land use conditions to the shoreline. We will also identify funding opportunities that could be explored in depth to help fund any of the initiatives that y'all want to move forward with. I highlighted in green about the evaluation of the potential for a flood map revision process through FEMA. That's specifically what we're talking about today. As I mentioned, we've initiated the study with the data collection and initial analysis, coastal analysis phase. So hopefully in the next, I would say 2 months, we'll have an update on that process. For background and context, really looking at how the flood zones are defined for the island. It's strictly all coastal flooding, which is a lot different than rainfall and riverine flooding. So you're dealing with wind-generated waves along with a surge event. And for the island, the primary coastal flood zone designations are your VE, which is your high-risk velocity zones, and then followed by an AE zone, and that AE zone is subdivided into a coastal AE and a non-coastal AE. And then sometimes you'll have an AO zone. The O is for overtopping. And then you'll have an X zone, which there are very few X zones on the island. Those are areas where the actual ground elevation is higher than the adjacent flood elevation. So how do the wave mitigation systems give you the opportunity to do a map revision? It's because these systems are designed to withstand the surge and wave forces associated with that FEMA-defined 100-year event. They are designed to effectively reduce the wave heights below a 3-foot height on top of a surge, and that 3 foot is the threshold for defining where the VE zone starts and then where it transitions to an AE zone. So any wave heights below 3 feet are considered a coastal A zone. And then they're designed to a certain level not to cause concern for a wave run-up event or excessive overtopping or wave reflection. So those are key components of the system that we always look at to make sure we're not going to cause any adverse impacts to adjacent properties. And based on those design parameters, that system is considered to be a certified structure in FEMA's eyes, meaning that it provides enough level of protection to actually warrant a change in the risk of flood damage on the landward side of that structure. So we're able to define that the V zone would actually stop pretty much at that structure, and then an A zone would commence afterwards. And the typical process that is taken with these is we do the whole process is a letter of map revision. But when you're talking about a proposed project, it's always recommended to go in with a conditional letter of map revision to get FEMA's approval of the proposed changes if you were to actually install this system. That way, you don't have to invest until you know that FEMA is going to be acceptable with it. And then once you obtain the other construction level permits through the town, through the state, then you come in with an as-built LOMR, letter of map revision, to document that system's been implemented and now the change should happen to the flood zone. So again, conditional letter of map revision and a letter of map revision. These are the two definitions that I just summarized on the last slide. But it's actually, you'll get an official determination letter from FEMA that documents the changes. And that stays with, it's the only determination you'll get until such a time if FEMA were to ever come back and change to a whole new regional study and actually change the surge information, baseline information. But in our experience, it takes them at least 8 to 10 years to do that. It takes a long time. For instance, your maps are dated 2022, but they started that study back in 2013-14. So it took that long for them to actually become effective. So I doubt that they'll be revisiting this surge study for some time. So what does that mean for Times Square? Again, other benefits that come with the wave mitigation system include public infrastructure. You've got some public utilities, roadway, pedestrian areas in that corridor, the Times Square area, that would also be protected from potential damage from wave impact. Property value preservation. Again, reduced damage from storms, reduced upland erosion, opportunity for the flood zone designation revision, and which doing that allows for easier compliance for new structures to your local floodplain ordinance and to the Florida Building Code and to ASC 24 for flood resistant construction requirements. There's also an opportunity for flood insurance premium reductions based on those structures being located in a lesser risk flood zone. We believe there's opportunity to enhance the recreation area of Times Square, integrate the system into the pedestrian corridor to make it not only functional from a risk reduction standpoint, but also something that can be enjoyed from the visitors. So current conditions for Times Square area. The image is basically a map we put together to show where the extent of the zone VE is in red, the AE zone is in blue. It also delineates where the 1991 DEP coastal construction control line is and where the 1978 original CCCL or CCSL setback line is today. So all of the area of Times Square is in the VE zone. Majority of the area is seaward of the 1991 CCCL. And then the most seaward parcels are impacted by the 78 line.
Elizabeth, quick question on this.
Yes.
So like at the top there in the middle, if a property is partially in the VE and partially in the AE, I assume that you have to go by the codes that would apply in the VE zone. Is
Yes,
that correct?
sir.
Okay.
Yeah, if the building straddles a zone or even a corner of it touches the VE,
You have
it's
to go with
subject to the VE.
Okay. The entire property or just that section of the property?
It depends on the structure footprint. It's really about
Okay.
where the structure touches it. So the regulatory requirements for structures for in a zone VE and seaward of the CCCL, all new structures have to have their lowest structural or horizontal structural member of their first finished floor level at or above the design flood elevation. And when you're seaward of the CCCL, that's going to be DEP's 100-year elevation, which is several feet higher than FEMA. So where FEMA is 14, DEP is likely going to be around 18 to 19 feet. Only use for enclosures allowed are only for storage, access, and parking. New structures must have an open foundation supported on piles, piers, columns, grade beams. There's no allowance for dry flood proofing, even for commercial areas. And no structural field is allowed to support a structure. So changing the flood zone from a VE to an AE coastal opens up some new opportunities for new structures in that area. Number one, as far as the design flood elevation and elevation requirements, going to an AE zone, coastal AE zone, and being seaward of the CCCL, the habitable floor, the first habitable floor still needs to be above the design flood elevation, and that's likely going to be DEP's elevation. The key is that you're allowed now to have non-residential uses can be dry flood proofed. So you can have those uses at a lower floor as long as you properly dry flood proof them. And that means making sure that the enclosed space is watertight, not only making sure your windows and doors are covered, but also your walls are designed to be watertight as well. And dry flood proofing is still not permitted for any residential building or any residential use of a mixed use building. And the criteria for dry flood proofing allowance in the Florida Building Code, the qualification is that you need to make sure your foundation that's supporting that enclosed space is also designed to account for any potential scour or wave action. Per DEP and the Florida Building Code chapter or section 3109, there are certain non-habitable uses that are allowed below the 100-year storm elevation for DEP, and they can be above the FEMA elevation or below the FEMA elevation if properly dry flood proof. And these allowed uses, I think, are pretty key to understand. So obviously vehicle parking, storage areas, building access, but you could do small mechanical, electrical rooms. You could do retail shops, which I think is a key component for Times Square, commercial pool bars, snack bars with portable grill areas, commercial dining areas, but the permanent kitchen has to be at the DEP elevation. Bathrooms, recreational spaces such as gyms, card rooms, commercial service, storage, and back of house function, and other non-habitable uses. Basically, nothing that's used for living and sleeping.
I just want to go back because what
Yeah.
you said there, I think you missed a key point that
Yeah.
if people are listening and if they can't see it, is it said that the commercial dining areas with the permanent kitchen is located landward of the CCL or above.
Above, yes.
So they would have to elevate it.
Yes.
You forgot the or was a big thing there that I think
Or.
didn't come across.
I didn't, yeah, you're right, I didn't. Or if like, if the building straddles the CCCL boundary, if they had the permanent kitchen on the landward side of that boundary, you could put it,
Up above.
you could put it lower.
Yes, it was on
Yes, yes,
the landward side of the CCC.
landward side, yes. So basically, what it means is that for Times Square, it would create opportunity for more easily accessible commercial uses for the visitors. So in summary, the implementation of the wave mitigation wall system for Times Square means that there's going to, there'll be reduced damage to those structures from storm surge and wave effects. It provides opportunities for enhanced pedestrian use corridors and public spaces. Again, it provides the opportunity to revise the flood zone designation for those properties landward of the system. Again, it creates flexibility, an opportunity to have those more accessible commercial uses, which makes it a little easier to comply with the floodplain ordinance and with the flood-resistant construction requirements. So that's really my presentation for today. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
John, questions?
Yeah, but out of left field, because I was reading something this morning. Are you familiar with living seawalls?
Yes,
What, I see Miami Beach and I think Longboat Key are looking into those. Do you see that as an option for Fort Myers Beach?
I think there's a concept for that to work. It may not be, I think those seawalls are typically a seawall is going to be something that it's
Mhm.
in the water itself, interacts with the mean high water line. But there are living shorelines that are more upland and perhaps still have that hardened feature with the natural feature for it. So that's going to be one of the concepts we're looking at.
Are you familiar with the company that is doing that with like 3D printing and things like that?
Yes, they're actually, the walls actually have
Plastic or?
things, I don't know what the terminology is, aspects of it that create habitat for like
Yes,
oysters and
Okay,
yes,
thanks.
yes, Yep.
Scott?
If you could go back to slide 7. What does it mean for Times Square? Your last point was enhanced beach access and scenic quality. So could we in fact design a wall there that would actually add a couple beach accesses? And if that happens, then could we get
8.
potentially TDC funds because we're creating new beach accesses?
Well, I'll let her.
Yes.
Yeah. It's
Yes. That's the whole concept of creating a pedestrian corridor, or you're asking if we could actually create beach accesses, separate beach accesses.
Yes.
Yes.
I would think that, just if you use the pier is receiving TDC funds.
Right.
I don't know why this potentially couldn't use TDC funds as well, but you would be the expert on that more than I would.
Do you think, so let's just say you create it where there's 2 more access points to the beach. Or how many do you think we could get in there? Probably, I'm thinking 2.
It's going to be heavily relying on the state's review.
The engineering, I would say the engineering of it's probably going to really dictate what you could do, wouldn't it? As far as its flexibility and being able to do what it's designed to do.
Right.
Because I'm thinking at the end of the day, it's all going to be about cost, right? And can you, I know you've brought this up at other meetings, what ballpark cost per foot are we looking at? Or is not we, but is everyone looking at?
We've been, we feel comfortable with the $1,000 linear foot cost.
Still there?
Yeah.
So potentially, hypothetically, if we did have some beach accesses and points in there, then we, in your opinion, think we'd be eligible to get some TDC funding?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would think maybe
Because-
Nancy could help. I think the legal description of this would fit under beach and shoreline. Isn't that one of the big things that they look at through the TDC is the legal definition of beach and shoreline?
Most likely, I don't know the answer right offhand to give you.
And I think we would have to, as far as your local court regulations go, obviously we have to look at those beach accesses. If they encroach into the EC zone, what that means from a local permitting standpoint. Yeah.
I would certainly think it'd be worth asking for.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I would too. That's all I have right at the moment.
Rebecca?
This looks interesting. So would a beach access likely go up and over the wall or be an open spot?
Yeah, not necessarily. As I've talked to with before, we've done this where we can create accesses by overlapping like two sections of the wall, and they might be offset enough to where you create that access
zigzag.
to get to the beach. But and looking from the beach itself towards the upland, it would look like a solid structure there, but there are actually openings in there to promote access and normal drainage flow that needs to happen.
And I'm sure you've probably discussed this and I'm just late to the party, but what is the depth or the width of the wall? Is it something folks could just sit on, or can they bicycle? Is it wide?
Yeah,
Has that
so
been discussed?
typically we usually do a concrete cap, and that width can vary from 1.5 to 2 foot. There's really no
Can you go back?
Magic.
You had a picture I saw of, I think it was Clearwater,
yes.
that it's kind of hard to see, but you could see, if you get a chance, Rebecca, go up to Clearwater Beach. They have
Yep.
it. They have,
Nice.
I have the bigger slides. Hold on. There, that one.
so it gives you kind of an idea.
Oh, I see. Yeah, nice. That's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
And there were some residences or condos that had these seawalls that are now appear to be way under the sand.
They're yes. There's quite a few properties that already have retaining walls that have been buried. Some have been repaired.
Mhm.
But I think the distinction is that I don't know if those walls were designed for the same intent.
The same way.
Yes. So
I have one more question. Exactly how far out, or is there a limit how far past the CCL line you can build the wall?
So as I've been recommending, we need to keep it landward of the 78 line, which is the more seaward line.
Okay.
Not that we couldn't go further seaward, especially if there's already existing. 'Cause I know that some of those seaward properties at Times Square and even the parking lot has an existing wall already.
Mhm.
It just gets when there's an existing infrastructure there, we could utilize that as a way to tell the state, hey, we already have this wall here. We want to enhance it, and with a better protecting feature. It might be an easier conversation if we move it more landward. So it's going to vary. The location recommendations, I think, are going to vary as we go down the island based on that aspect.
Okay, but have you done or seen any walls that were actually in front of the CCL, seaward?
Only the ones on Bonita Beach, because the 78 line is further inland. It actually cuts into the condominium properties there.
Mhm.
And the existing wall is seaward of it by about 15, 20 feet. And we enhanced that
So you
wall.
added, so if there's an existing wall there, then you
Yes.
can,
And then you've already got
you've already got,
justification that there's already a structure there.
okay, but you
Yes.
can't go further.
Yeah, but we would not go we could not go further.
Okay.
So
Got it.
I think it depends. It's going to be very site specific, location specific of where the recommended locations are going to be. So that's.
Thank you.
Anything else, Rebecca?
I just wanted to ask, are there any risks associated that we may not be considering? This looks good and exciting, and are there things that we may not be considering that you can think of for us to evaluate?
I don't think so. We make sure that we design these structures to look at all potential risk. What's interesting is, we've gone through several reviews with FEMA on similar projects, and they're very keen about asking about making sure we're not going to cause too much disruption of the material landward of the wall, like loss of soil. So we actually put in what we call like a splash pad behind the wall. And it's designed to, it's designed based on the wave heights that we anticipate coming over the wall. And it's there to protect material, but it can also act as a sidewalk for pedestrians. So it seems like the things that we're looking at to help mitigate any concerns or risk end up being positives for the overall project.
Perfect. And
Yeah.
the life of that wall is expected to be, any idea?
I believe our structural engineer claims, that's like a 50 to 75 year.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jim?
Good morning.
Morning.
I wonder the scope of your contract. Is it just for Times Square or is it for the entire island at Fort Myers Beach?
For the entire island.
Is this just the first analysis,
Yes.
most time sensitive one?
Yes.
So that being the case, for the Times Square proposal, and again, let's go 10,000 feet, won't hold you to this. What's the overall cost estimate to put in a wave mitigation wall for Times Square? Ballpark.
Pull up LIPA, you can figure it out.
Ballpark. Is it 10 million? Is it 100 million? Is it 1 million?
No, I mean, I have to guesstimate on the linear foot there. But if it was,
Give me a range.
Well,
Ballpark.
just use a mile. Just use a mile as a calculation. It's not a mile, but use that as a calculation. That'd be an easy way for you to back into it. I
so
think.
it would be 5,000 times 1,000. So that's 500, like $1 million.
So
Probably-
$1 million to do the Times Square section, ballpark.
If it was a mile long.
Yeah,
For
if it was a
every mile.
mile. And that includes like the
That doesn't
engineering
seem right.
design
Math seems-
and costs for permitting and doing the
Okay.
map revision.
So in your work, and I know you're an engineering firm, but do you do a value proposition for a community? In other words, there's potential for reduced costs for flood insurance. There's potential for increased land value.
Yes.
And particularly if we're talking the entire island at some point, is there a value proposition you could do where you can add up the value of reduced flood insurance premiums, enhanced value of the property, enhanced uses, et cetera, et cetera? In other words, does the value proposition, just ballpark, does it balance? In other words, is the cost of the mitigation wall, aside from the carnage of reducing the impact of a hurricane,
Right.
does the value proposition of a wave mitigation wall equal the cost saving benefits of it? And can you make that argument?
Yes.
And
And that, because I think you look at the value related to
Build back.
property value,
insurance, yeah.
reduced construction cost,
right.
increased revenue for those businesses.
I don't disagree with you. I think it can be made, but you're the expert, and
Yeah.
we're going to have to make a case to the taxpayers of Fort Myers Beach
Yeah.
Mhm.
and to the business community. And we're also going to figure out who's going to bear the cost. Obviously, we're looking at some grant dollars and other opportunities, but someone's going to have to bear the cost. And if we can make the public value proposition, and we could make it with data, that's really going to help sell the concept. And so maybe even our previous speaker, Frankie, he might be a good person to marriage with to help try to put that
Right.
value proposition together. Because I know
I
you
agree.
may not do the economics of this dynamic, you're doing the engineering. But I think at some point we're going to have to talk to the residents of Fort Myers Beach and say, hey, here's the cost benefit analysis of doing this.
Mhm.
And then here's how we're going to finance it. We're going to have to come up with a maybe a very unique financing an opportunity given the cost benefit analysis. So just something to think
Okay.
about. But thanks for
Thank
your
you,
time
Jim.
this morning.
Well, Jim, I think just rough numbers going off of what Elizabeth said, if you take the whole entire 7 Mile Island, you're about $37 million roughly to do the entire island.
Yep. And again, if we can sell that to the residents by
Mhm.
saying, hey, your flood insurance is going to go down X and the value of your property, and obviously the comfort and security of knowing the next storm is going to be less.
The functionality
impactful.
of your business.
Yeah. And the transportation corridor up and down the island. relieving pressure on Estero Boulevard. There's a lot of variables, but I think we need to collect all those variables and measure them and then put that value proposition together, because I think that would be helpful just in terms of helping people to understand the value of the idea.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've beaten you to death over these questions over the last several months, so I don't have anything really
Okay.
more to add to it. I'm fully aware of what this potential could be for the island. It's, to Jim's point, just getting everyone on board to understand the cost versus reward benefit, and how much of it of that, say 37 million, we could chop away at with grants and
Yep.
TDC funding and things of those sorts. If we could get it to a much lower level, I think it makes our pitch a little easier.
Yes, I agree. And we're excited to be getting started. So
Will, do you have anything you want to add?
No, thank you very much.
thank
If I
you.
could, Mayor,
Yes.
I just going through the presentation, I saw the last slide was that the Little Hickory Island Bonita Beach construction was completed. When was that done? You said just completed?
It's been completed for a couple of months now.
Okay.
So
Are
they are
there any
they are
next-
doing some additional sand work
Okay.
to finish. They had to wait till turtle season that
Sure.
was done, and now they're going to complete the sand and the vegetation.
Is that something you think we could tour or look at, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Also, are there any next steps, such as working with FEMA to get a reclassification of flooding issues there? Or?
Oh, for that one,
Yeah.
we did it. We already did it once because we did a small portion of it several years ago. They're not looking to do it again.
Okay.
So, but we did do the neighbor. We did do Seascape and Dolphin Way as well, and those walls are up as well. But they were done before Hurricane Ian, and we did a flood map revision for them at that time.
If you could give me a contact, so
Sure.
thank you, I appreciate
Yes.
that.
Actually, Elizabeth, I do have a question. I was speaking with a property owner in the island that was looking at doing this or is in the process of doing this. And they mentioned something about the state giving some pushback on I think you understand what I'm talking about.
Yes,
We were giving
yes.
some pushback. Has that been cleared?
We're still working with
Okay.
them on that. So we have a strategy. I'm still confident that things are going to move forward. I think it's in the way that the wall is presented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have agenda management. Jim, anything you have to add or want to add?
Nothing this morning. Thank you.
Okay. Rebecca?
Nothing.
Scott?
Nothing. Do we add the thing we talked about?
Yesterday? Is that on there? I haven't looked. I don't think it is. It won't show up on this one, but on the next
On
one.
this one.
That's on the next one.
But
The
just want
time.
to verify that that's going to be.
The
on.
town hall property discussion.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Jim? John?
Nothing.
I do not have anything either. All right. With that, is there nothing else on the agenda? We don't need a motion to end the meeting. We're going to take a 15-minute. What time is it?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Before we adjourn, involves the next segment. I want to ask our deputy town manager, because she's done such a wonderful job on this, and the presenters for the next segment. We've spent extensive amount of time in the last week or so on the comp plan. And I know the comp plan's different than the strategic plan, but there's a lot of redundancies. And I see a 4-hour schedule here. I'm hopeful that with the efficacy of our wonderful deputy town manager, she can find economy somewhere where there's duplication in what we've already talked about and what we're about to talk about. So we can maybe reduce the quantity of time, given the fact that we've already discussed these topics ad nauseum for the last few weeks. With your wonderful organizational skills, just give that some thought during the break, because I saw the timeline on this and I thought to myself, what we've already just been through the last couple weeks, there's got to be some redundancies in there. But I will just challenge you to wrestle with that, if you will. Wrestle is the word of the day.
Yes, sir. And the good news is that Angela was here when we had our initial discussion about the comp plan. So she is in the know of the conversations that had happened and the concerns. Our focus for today is in crafting our mission, vision, and guiding principles, which is something we need to do as the start of our strategic plan. And she has some potential categories of goals so we can make that a little swifter.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. With that, we will adjourn our M&P meeting. We'll take about a 15-minute break and we'll come back at 11 o'clock.